Today, let's explore a profound topic together, the meaning of life and the values we should live for. What are the true values of life? Why do we need to find and live by these values? Does a life direction, also known as the red thread running through life, which many call a philosophy of life, really exist, and is it necessary? This is the crucial foundation for guiding each person's entire life journey. The question of life philosophy and the meaning of life is not just an abstract philosophical issue, but also a practical need for each individual. When people define their life's meaning, they will have motivation and a clear direction in every decision and action. You know that Vietnamese education lacks consistent direction. That direction comes from the red thread running through one's life. In the language of researchers, they call it a philosophy of life. In layman's terms, it's choosing a principle to live by. In business terms, it's called core values. They are all quite similar. In essence, they all point to one thing, a compass for life. This is the common ground, the similarity that we need to recognize to find a common voice in the community. So, when we find a common voice, a common red thread, in your opinion, when two people come together to start a family, have children together, and we share the same red thread throughout life, is this family more likely to have discord or happiness? But there is something we need to clearly distinguish. Please note, everything else is just a means. For example, one person works in this profession, another in that profession. These are just means to earn money, to have money, to build a warm home. But what is this warm home based on? What is the core of having a happy home? We are almost never taught, never trained in core values. Because in essence, the education system we are following across the nation today has not focused on the philosophy of life. The philosophy of life has become blurred in modern education. So, you notice our education sector keeps struggling in finding core values, struggling in defining a clear educational philosophy. So, to gain a deep understanding of the philosophy of life and the meaning of life, I also had to spend nearly over 20 years, from the time I stepped out of university gates. In fact, I had been searching for answers to questions about core values and the meaning of life since 10th grade. In 10th grade, I was curious about the meaning of life, about ethical values. I have read many books about people, books on psychology, philosophy, and books on morality to understand the question, why do we live, and live for what? Although I read them in 10th grade, I didn't fully understand. I was still vague about this philosophy of life. Later, when I started working, I pondered this question even more. And later on, around 40 years old, I clearly recognized the basic ethical values and philosophy of life. Meaning, I had recognized them before, but they were still unclear. Around 40 years old, the understanding of the philosophy of life, of the red thread running through life, became clear. Then, after 40, I systematized it into a system of lectures on ethics, core values, and the meaning of life. The first group I shared about the philosophy of life and ethical values with was the Raising Righteous Children Club, an educational club. I trained them for about 3 years. In those 3 years, once a month, I organized a training session for parents in the club on how to educate their children based on ethical values. The next group to hear the sharing were teachers of Duke, the school system we founded. From the Raising Righteous Children Club, we moved to the school system. The entire system of lectures on philosophy of life and core values was reorganized and developed into a lecture system for the school. School teachers, then school parents, also joined in learning together. Parents joined in learning, then teachers brought their families, and parents also brought their relatives and acquaintances. In the past, my training course lasted 4 to 5 months to complete, just one session per week. Every week there were practical exercises. About 20 sessions like that. If you divide it into 4 sessions a week, then 20 sessions is 5 months, right? In those 5 months, after finishing the course on philosophy of life and values, I discovered an interesting thing. Initially, 100 people enrolled, and in the end, about 90 people completed it. After 5 months, the proportion of outsiders was larger than that of insiders. Initially, I trained internally with the proportion of people within the system accounting for 70%, but after 5 months, the internal proportion decreased to 50%, even down to 40%. Meanwhile, the number of people from outside kept increasing. From this phenomenon, I realized an important thing. People working in the education industry are not necessarily truly passionate about educational philosophy. Many of them became teachers because they passed the entrance exam to pedagogical university, applied to my school, and passed the interview. They participated in the courses with a mindset of being forced to learn, not because they really wanted to learn. This is the difference in learning motivation. They learn because it is a job requirement, not because of genuine passion. In contrast to the internal group, outsiders participated in learning with a spirit of voluntariness and proactiveness. They actively sought it out, even willingly paid tuition fees, and learned with a proactive attitude. Meanwhile, insiders learned in a passive state of mind. These two psychological states create a clear difference in results. Looking back at the system, I noticed that people without educational or pedagogical degrees, but determined to enter the education industry, often achieved better results than those who were formally trained. They dared to sacrifice stable careers after 10 to 15 years of work to switch to the education field. Their determination and passion were extremely strong, helping them quickly catch up and even surpass those with many years of experience in the industry after about 5 years. This phenomenon is not only present in education, but also in many other fields. Louis Pasteur was a chemist, but is honored in the medical field for inventing the vaccine. Maria Montessori was a doctor, but became a major influence in the field of education. In Vietnam, General Vo Nguyen Giap is a typical example. He was never formally trained in any military academy, just a history teacher. However, thanks to his deep study of the history of battles over thousands of years, he became an excellent military strategist recognized worldwide. 4 years of university education only account for about 5% of life, if calculated over 80 years of living. In fact, this number is insignificant in the long journey of a lifetime. In that 5%, the truly specialized knowledge is even less, because the curriculum usually includes many diverse subjects. When graduating, many people only teach a single subject, making the amount of knowledge actually applied perhaps only 1% of total lifetime. With such a small percentage, is it fair to call it specialized? Meanwhile, those who are truly passionate spend up to 90% of their lives on their beloved field. They invest all their heart, time, and effort into it. As a result, despite not having formal qualifications, they still achieve much greater accomplishments than those who are only basically trained. When I understood the power of passion, I began to observe successful people in career transitions. I discovered an astonishing common point. They succeed very quickly when switching from one profession to another. This happens because they carry a formula for success, from the old field to the new field. The secret lies in how they apply that formula to the new environment with all their passion and determination. The results are amazing. After a short time, they often become leaders in the new field. Statistics show that they only take about 2 to 3 years to become experts in the field they just switched to. Let's weigh 2 learning methods on the scale: 2 to 3 years of self-study with a voluntary spirit, delving deep to the core, compared to 4 years in a traditional university environment. Which method is more effective? Reality shows that the concentration and immersion in the self-learning process can bring about a level of increase 3 to 5 times higher than learning through a standard curriculum. Research worldwide also shows a remarkable result. When comparing online and in-person students, 10 years after graduation, the online learning group was 3 times more successful than the in-person group. This difference comes from learning psychology. The online learning group is forced to be voluntary and proactive in learning, without direct instructor reminders. They have to turn on the computer themselves, connect to the internet themselves, solve exercises themselves, and when facing difficulties, they have to proactively seek solutions. In contrast, students in lecture halls often develop a passive mentality. If I don't understand, the teachers will explain, or if I encounter difficulties, I can ask friends. This mentality inadvertently hinders the process of developing self-learning and problem-solving skills, skills that are extremely important in the real world. This habit of reliance significantly reduces the ability to develop independent and creative thinking. Therefore, we should not be hesitant when facing issues of working outside our major or changing careers. There is an important area that the formal education system rarely mentions: the true meaning of life. The question, "We are born, we grow up, so what is the meaning of life?" is almost never included in the curriculum. This is the reason why many young people today feel lost and directionless. You go to work, receive a salary, but in your heart, you often feel empty, precarious, and bored. This stems from the fact that we are not taught about the depth of life, the depth of consciousness, and the red thread connecting ourselves to this world. Looking back at my personal experience, I spent 5 years studying at university without once hearing any lecturer mention the meaning of life. No one said a word about character or ethics. Each class focused on a specific goal. Drawing class was for drawing. Probability and statistics class was for calculating. Machine design class was for making drawings. The entire training process only focused on finding a job, making a living, but never mentioned how to live a worthwhile life. Asking for 5 years like that, thousands, tens of thousands of students, how many can form character? They cannot form character. This is what Vietnam is lacking. One of the subjects that helps shape character is civic education. This subject was originally called ethics, but we lost such a good name and changed it to civic education. And what does civic education teach? It teaches to walk on the right side of the road, to obey the law, right? But that is not ethics. This subject does not help us recognize what core character is and recognize the meaning of life. Is walking on the right side of the road or obeying the law enough to become a moral person? Not really. Many people follow the rules just because they are afraid of being punished, not because they understand and believe in the ethical values behind those rules. So, civic education teaches ethics from the outside in, imposing rules that people must follow, without caring whether they truly recognize those values or not. The consequence is that when faced with a situation without clear rules, like one fine day, you pass a deserted road without traffic lights and see someone fall and break their leg. You are indifferent. Why? Because according to civic education, helping or not helping is the same. This is the police's job. And from there, indifference appears. Many people, including civic education teachers, are mistaken in thinking that this subject is enough to shape character. In fact, true ethics operates in the opposite direction, from the inside out. Ethics originates from good thoughts, kindness, and sincerity, and then manifests externally through behavior. Teaching ethics from the outside in can lead to dangerous long-term consequences for society. In this sharing session, we will explore both approaches, from the outside in and from the inside out. We will discover effective methods to awaken the ethical values within each person, create a foundation for comprehensive character development, and help each person find the true meaning of life.